was around the importance of that in-person component. So this is my second feature as a producer, and my first one also premiered at Sundance, but it was entirely virtual. And so I was able to compare both experiences. And while I was really impressed with what the festival did in 2021 and how much they tried to recreate that for us, I think the ability to be in the room and really immerse yourself in the film and kind of understand how it plays with an audience, in particular for that first or second viewing, is really important to us. And so it's tricky because I do think the virtual component, of course, expands access, and it is exciting for people to be able to watch your film pretty immediately that otherwise you may have not been reaching. But it's just really difficult to kind of replace that in-person watch. So I was glad for it. I was glad we were able to come back.
Anya?
Yeah, I mean, for better or for worse, this isn't something new, but I think that it feels more and more true as Sundance has such a gravitational force on our industry, and it has such a like a disproportionate impact on the entire trajectory of our films. From the opportunity around sales, from the opportunity around the possibility of press, from having the casual connections and chances of getting to like build relationships with like so many people in our industry, and it functionally operates also as capital towards awards campaigns. So I think that because our company at Multitude works with a lot of emerging filmmakers, it's also like can be a real culture shock of having come from this sort of space of working like really personally or really sort of politically on your project, and then coming into sort of like the heart of the market and of our industry, kind of like like in its kind of clearest form. And we talk to everyone around sort of like really taking advantage of that to the extent that you can, like recognizing there are huge barriers of access, and it's so expensive to just come if you do get accepted. Figuring out like making money where there isn't to get just housing and be able to get in the door. It really has it can have such an impact on the trajectory of your film and of your life as a filmmaker. And it also did feel like really meaningful after 2 years of being in the pandemic to get to be together, sort of like despite all of that, to build real relationships and to deepen real relationships. And I think that there was a way where maybe because a lot of us have been kind of in our disparate places, because of the sort of consolidation of so many people in our community and our industry in one place, like I also felt like really energized and moved and excited to get to see people's work and to get to experience our work, in that way, in a big screen with a great sound system, and to, like hear people's breathing and, and get to, and responses. So I feel both kind of the awareness of so much of the questions around access and those barriers, and also just really feel also the preciousness of what it is for there to be a space for us all to be together, for those of us who can, to be together in this way.
Yeah, that's great. Myself, even, I went, but there was the biggest part of me saying you probably shouldn't spend this money right now. And like I shared a 1-bedroom with a producer friend with one bed. Like, I mean, I did it as cheap as possible, but it's still challenging. But in the end, I think it's all the things you said of just needing to connect with my colleagues was important. Yeah. Laura?
Yes, I really agree with everybody else about how important it was to connect in person. Felt really good. And like the power of being able to see the film in the real space with people around. I realized during our premiere screening of Fremont that I'd only seen the movie on my laptop, and each time I watched it, had to give notes. And it was amazing just to kind of settle in and experience the emotional arc of the movie with other people. And I think one of my takes is that, yes, we need to be in person in order to connect with other people. And also, when you're in person with so many people in this tiny town, you have to have a lot of patience, and things move really slowly in very different aspects, like the lines, the traffic, but also like the glitchy app and the website, and just trying to get tickets and get on wait lists. And also that applies to the film sales market. It's just kind of, you have to have patience, and not everything is going to happen on day one. And and I think we're finding that across the board.
Who didn't go? Deidre?
Yeah, I'm a first-time feature producer, so going into this was pretty crazy, especially making a film during COVID. Also, like inflation really hitting. It was just a really hard time to make indie films, and so getting into Sundance was a huge dream. But going in without distribution is yes, very scary. We're in good hands, but it's hard to even ascertain what the state of film is right now, because things are changing so quickly. Like at first, a lot of the streamers were buying up content left and right, and now they're making a lot of their own. And so it's hard to find what kind of space we even have. So that's definitely a little scary. But being in person, I hadn't been to Sundance in probably the last 10 years. Our short film, Little Chief, premiered there in 2020, but I was giving birth, so I didn't get to go. And I realized sitting in the premiere of Fancy Dance on Friday night at the Eccles, like huge sold out crowd, that I hadn't been to a screening in over 3 years since the pandemic hit. And the first movie that I got to see in person was Our Own, which is pretty special. And being on Zoom for so long, meeting all these faces. One of my favorite moments is the producer celebration, just waiting in line. I got to make new friends, and then I met Taylor Shung, who had helped me out, but I didn't know what she looked like. So when I met her, I just started bawling because she had been so kind as we pieced it together. But and then yes, like the same, I had not seen our movie projected until the premiere, and I love going to the Q&As and watching the audience watch the end of the movie, people crying, the questions that come out of it. It's definitely my favorite part, and you can't really get that virtually.
Thank you. Diane?
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel a lot of gratitude. I've been coming to Sundance for a long time. I came before I was a filmmaker. This is where I found inspiration in my career throughout the years. And to be able to just be back here and be present and to be with a film, and especially a film like King Cole, which is so personal, and the team that made it had never, they've never been to Sundance, and watching, just watching people sort of have that experience for the first time, and the gratitude they feel, and just hearing from audiences. It's beautiful. I mean, we didn't leave our house for almost 2 years. And the fact that we all made it here and premiered films, and we're together, there's something really communal about what we do. And it doesn't matter. And the fact that if we're sitting here complaining about apps and lines and things like that, that's awesome. Those are great problems to have, right? Because it just means we're all together again, and we're trying to figure things out. And, and I just, I feel a lot of thankfulness for that in that respect.
I had a thought on my flight home, like I said, I've been going in various different positions for 20 years. And so it's easy for me to like, well, there wasn't this and this was wrong, this, but then I thought, well, yeah, but there was a filmmaker here this year who was having the time of their lives and had no idea of anything else. And that evolution in this process, in this world is really important. And so I think that's a really good point to make. So, I mean, the general consensus is we all love being in person. We all feel the need for it. I'd love to switch to the marketplace a little bit. As I mentioned, you guys, unless I don't think I'm wrong, but everyone came in without distribution. I'll put in the chat in just a second. IndieWire keeps track of, all the deals like to date. And so I looked at it this morning, and 12 films have been bought since the festival started. 5 films were bought just before the festival, and 21 came in with distribution. So I just, want to chat just a little bit about, the kind of state of putting a movie together just with, equity grants, film incentives, not having distribution, and the importance of these festivals to sell your films. But when 21 come in, with distribution and Apple and Amazon and big companies, how are we talking to financiers? How are we talking to funders to put our money together, knowing that while 12 is, a great number, there's over 100 films at the festival. Lauren, do you want to jump in with any thoughts? I'll put this article in the chat for everybody.
Well, I think Rebecca, that this has been my whole career, is raising the money, doing it the way I want to do it, and then putting it in the marketplace. So I'm used to the festival route, and I'm used to not having a festival accept a film and still get a sale. So all is not lost. This was a reminder, this experience, because we sold within 24 hours of the premiere. This was a reminder of the energy on the other side, which is the sales side. Sony Pictures Classics loves the movie and wants to do right by it. And that was just a wonderful partnership to start anew. The last film I made and the film before that, not the same experience necessarily. It took a little longer in the negotiations, but buyers are looking. So when films come in with distribution, and a large number of them, that's something that the festivals have to reckon with too. They are considered in some ways a marketing platform for some of the studios. So they have to make space to celebrate people using that platform for sales. And I think Sundance is trying to make, trying to reckon with that, and trying to make sure that they are still for independence. It can't be an easy thing to do, but there's enough of them with enough of their own unique personalities. Sundance is not Toronto. It's not South by. It's not Tribeca. And not getting into Sundance doesn't mean you won't be celebrated by one of these other festivals. In fact, and then that doesn't even include the international, and that doesn't even include the regional. So it's a really important part of the process of the sales and marketing process, and what you must communicate to an investor to say, these are your options. Be careful saying this is the option. You may not have, the money to do it in an independent route if that's your point of view.
Yeah, I had a very, not going to say her name, but a very well-known, reputable producer text me yesterday after the awards, and she just said, Focus Feature wins top prize. I don't know how Sundance is still considered by anyone to champion indie films. Sony and others in the awards too. And so like there's mixed feelings. Maria, I forgot your film. You did come in with distribution. You made your film with A24. So do you want to speak kind of maybe on the flip side? You have a very not uncommercial film, but you have a very different type of film coming in. So that more so than like maybe the Michael Jackson A24 doc, which I think people know to turn on. I don't think yours is that obvious movie. So why don't you speak next on that topic?
Yeah, it is obviously a bit of a different experience coming in with distribution, but to your point, our film is quite non-traditional in many ways, in storytelling structure and tone. And so that comes kind of with its own set of challenges. And I think for us, the festival and, kind of diving into people's reactions is what is largely a learning experience for us of how to get it to the right people, and how to be strategic around, finding that audience and letting some of that happen organically. The film I mentioned earlier that was in the virtual festival in 2021 came in with no distribution. And so again, it's been an interesting way to compare both experiences. And with that film, Son of Monarchs, it took us, a few months after the festival to get distribution. And it seems from conversations I've been having with some peers that it's just, I think the buyers are kind of taking their time. And similarly with our film, I think we're allowing it to breathe and taking our time, to kind of, again, it's a different challenge, but the ability to use the festival to learn about your audience and how to get it to the right people still is key, I think, for us and in my experience coming in with distribution.
Laura, to go to you next, you had a film in Next, small film, a lot of references to like Jim Jarmusch type of films. And I'm curious, how do you prep your team coming to a festival when you're talking about sales, your position? Filmmakers get freaked out about, oh, we're in Next, that means no one's going to buy, like, we're tiny. It's like, but David Lowery's had movies in the Next category. So, how do you talk to your team before coming into a festival such as Sundance with kind of a smaller underdog type film?
Right. Well, all of the sales reps that we met with kind of prepped us and said, we're in love with this movie. People are going to love it. We're going to find buyers, but it will require some patience on your part. It may not be that 24-hour deal after your premiere. And so the other producers and I made sure everybody knew that, from the director, writer, financiers, cast. And we all just came in really wanting to experience it with an audience and celebrate it and have a party. And I think now there is a lot of buzz around it, and it's gotten, like you said, every single review mentions Jim Jarmusch, and that's a good compliment. And it's already a critical success, and there's a handful of buyers who've already expressed interest, and there's one offer already. So it's actually going faster than we were prepared, than what we were told. So we feel pretty good right now, and really grateful and thankful to be in the festival and to be able to have this awesome experience. And so many of my team have, like, the festival it was their first time at the festival, and I saw how much fun they were having and how many new people they were connecting with, and it's just been pretty amazing.
Great. We're going to move over to freshly Academy nominated Diane Becker for Navalny, which they screened again this year, but Diane also had King Cole. And so would love to ask a similar question, having a film like as high profile as Navalny to a more thoughtful, meditative, film about Appalachia. What did you talk about with your team coming in as someone who is very well versed and experienced in this process?
I mean, Elaine made such a beautiful personal film with King Cole, her entire heart, soul, and being. There's no other person on the planet that could have made that movie except for her. So, and she's just someone who has such a stable head on her shoulders and is a realist and, and knows what she's made. Right. So, we know the position we're in. It's a beautiful film, and I think it's going to find its home, and it's going to touch audiences of in different ways. It has some universal sort of truths to it, but it's also a film about a specific place, and the most extraordinary thing was just like being able to be here and be with audiences and kind of hear people. And we had our Salt Lake screening last night, which was kind of the perfect way to end the festival, with some more local audiences, right? And some people who were from West Virginia, who were really moved, and then other people who were just regular people who just felt and saw so much about it. So, I think the smaller film, or a more personal film like that, something that's like poetic, I think everybody, if you understand what you have, it's easier to sort of put your head in a space where you're like, you know what kind of long tail you might need, right? And I've been here with films that haven't sold. So this is, I've been here with films that have sold. I've been here with films that had a place already, right? We couldn't have made Navalny if we hadn't partnered with a place like CNN to begin with, right? Just the stakes and the security was too risky and too high. So, I will say that. And I think the really beautiful thing about having the opportunity to screen Navalny here again was, Daniel had never been here and he didn't have that experience. And so it was really beautiful and bittersweet for him to be able to experience that. And it's not lost on me that there are handfuls of filmmakers who for the last 2 years weren't able to come here and have that experience. And I think that's, another reason why this place is so meaningful. I'm not sure if I answered the question, by the way.
No, it's fine. They're big questions. No, I think it's an interesting point to make too with, films coming in with distribution. The truth is a lot of indie films are getting made with partners now, particularly in the doc space for the reasons you're mentioning it. And, and I've having worked at Sundance, I've interrogated this question with them internally. And a lot of it is also just about the platform for the filmmaker as well. And thinking a little less about the distributor and wanting to put a filmmaker forward, even if the film seems like more high profile, usually the filmmaker is not. And so, yeah. Anya came in with the Indigo Girls documentary, and I would say Amy and Emily were the belle of the ball. So I'd love to hear, having that kind of celebrity driven, for lack of a better phrase, documentary, coming in, what was the conversations with your team on the process of sales and expectations?
Yeah, we similarly sort of, from my sort of like best judgment and take, obviously, I know that we all sort of say that the market changes and the industry changes so much every period of time. And I know we've sort of like, there have been some real sort of consolidation and constrictions and stuff. So I think coming in, we sort of didn't know. We had a similar talk with our sales team around, might take a little bit of time. We don't know what that little bit of time might be, but we know that not all of the teams are going to be, not all of the buyers are going to be at the festival, and getting kind of the having the whole team be able to watch can sometimes take a little bit of time. But I think what felt most important to us was, Amy and Emily, the Indigo Girls have, they've navigated kind of the market of the music industry for the last 40 years with this incredible grounding and humanity, and just a real sort of like real kind of humility. And it was really powerful to see the reaction of audiences to them, whether the Indigo Girls have played an important part of people's lives, over the course of their lives, because they have been sort of like diehard fans of listening to them, or whether they were just getting to know Amy and Emily's story, the Indigo Girls, as their music through our film. And I think, this is just really a personal, it's like not a hot take, it's just like a real personal reflection of somebody who kind of found them again through working on this film. Early fan, but kind of they had sort of receded for me, and then I came back to getting to know and really just like falling in love with their music and who they are, from getting to work on this project. It was just like really beautiful to see people's tenderness come through in our audiences, and in conversations with people, and that was something that was just really amazing to get to kind of feel that glow. And I think it's very specific to kind of who they have been throughout the course of their careers and who they were at the festival too. So in terms of like what success looked like for us and what we were talking about, it was also so that they could feel really kind of honored by this experience and recognized for their lifelong commitment to both their music, to like kind of authentically trying to connect with their audiences and be themselves, and to feel kind of seen in the film and also seen in the way that they are received over the course of this week. So you know, that was really meaningful, and I think they put a lot of trust in the team, and they put a lot of and they were just really open-hearted about kind of the artistic process. And that also was something that kind of was a reference point for me of just getting to feel and remember and kind of ground in the creative commitments that we're all part of, and that we're all really, you know, it's at the center of all of our work is this artistic, you know, work, and of really kind of holding that kind of as the key thing that would continue to serve through any one of these, you know, through any one of these decisions that we're making, is really being able to share that broadly and in the best means that sort of does it justice.
That was another reason why I went this year, was just the reminder of the creative community, but the work that we do is very precious and sacred. And I think it, in the world of streamers, gets very diluted. And just to remind myself why I like doing this work, because it's really hard. And we'll wrap up with Deidre. You had Fancy Dance, which was supported by multiple labs. You had the Big Eccles Friday night premiere. I think they're, you know, knowing the other producers on your project, probably a lot of expectations going in, you know, but this being your first feature, what, you know, and with more seasoned producers on your film too, what were your conversations like coming in?
Yeah, it was mainly, it echoed of especially what Laura was saying, just to be patient. We had a little bit of a hiccup with the screening before us, which pushed our screening time by about 45 minutes. So we lost off on a few buyers and distributors who were supposed to come in there, and with press. But things are still looking good. Several avenues open. I ran into Tommy Oliver on the street, who's with Confluential Films, our majority investor. And I was, you know, I'm antsy. This project has been going at a good clip ever since it was created. And so, you know, I'm expecting distribution for us to just keep on chugging, but he was like, I'm not worried. So if the majority financier is not worried, then I'll take a breather. But yeah, it's my first time navigating this, and especially with Nina Yang Bon Jovi, the very first time that we spoke to her, our conversation was largely about distribution and everything that she's navigated working with, well, especially with Passing last year. There are a lot of similarities about we're going into with Fancy Dance, and the same way in that we had issues finding investors for a first-time director, a queer Native woman in a language that only 20 people speak. I feel like distribution we will have to navigate these issues. Like a lot of the big sales are primarily white stories are being valued, I think, more than stories with people of color, with foreign as well. We're just trying to find a good home. But again, we're in good hands, and we've got incredible producers with us, so I'm not worried.
Yeah, looking at the sales list, it's also very genre heavy as well, which, you know, is a very tried and tested approach to making a film, as Lauren knows. Lauren and I had a previous life as a studio executive, and when I started my job in acquisitions, Lionsgate, I was at Lionsgate, just bought Cabin Fever, which was 20 years ago. And so
Don't age me.
I know, I'm aging myself too. But I would say Lauren's probably my first mentor. But you know, with that kind of perspective, Lauren, you know, somebody asked in the Q&A, like, how how has sales changed over the years? And I'm curious if like you're able to see it's always been hard, this is no different, or it's really remarkably different. If you have any thoughts on kind of the broad picture of sales.
Well, I think when the buyers sort of get nervous about what's coming, then sort of the cash flow gets constricted. Genre is tried and true. It's what brings people to the theaters, even still in a market where they're maybe deciding to watch it at home. And eventually that's why I decided to make a genre picture that then became a franchise. But there's still, back to my original comment, we are social beings. We still want to get together. I'm reminded of the fact that we made this movie with heavy, strict COVID guidelines in the actual production. And as soon as we finished, masks were off. But this was the first time we could all really experience actually each other. And it reminds me, and then the energy in the room and the, gathering for pictures and the celebration of other films. I'm reminded of what I always knew, what I tell my students, which is always think back to the human condition. What do we really want? How do we want to socialize? And it may take a little bit of time, but history is going to repeat itself. We're going to want to get together. We're going to want to be together in the room and experience. It may look a little different, but we may want to get together, sorry, I have dogs, and experience this together. So remember cash flow. Producers have to demand that their money get paid back. They have to keep cash flowing to those investors, or we don't have investors. We don't have repeat investors. Sorry for the barge.
Okay. No, last night I had the choice. I had some online tickets for Sundance, or I could go see Skinamarink in the theater because it was going to leave the theater, and that's the new hot horror movie made for no money. And I went to the theater because I wanted that communal experience because I had just had it, and I didn't want to watch Sundance movies by myself. I will watch the movies, but I did go to the theater last night. As we are rounding out the hour, since there's so many of you, I want to, Dear Producer is generously supported by Facet. And I asked the woman who runs it, like, what would she like me to ask? And she's great and always like pulling things to the positive. And I think one of the things we were talking about was, this idea that independent filmmaking really isn't sustainable in the way that I think we all want it to be. And there's lots of sustainability panels and conversations when we should probably just admit it's not sustainable for most people, but to move past that and say, though, but you're all figuring it out, right? Everyone here has made an amazing movie, is contributing to the community. You're all mentors in different ways. It's why you're here. And so I'd love to hear from everybody. How are you doing it? How are you making it work? Some of you have families, some of you are teachers, everyone kind of has these very well-rounded lives and still making great work. So for those of the people that are on this webinar listening in, or who are just getting started, or, maybe can't find their footing, how are you doing it right now? Maria, do you want to start?
Yes, I think this is always an important question. And the first thing I'll say is it's really hard. It's really, really hard. I think it's not a career path for the faint of heart, because there's a lot of ups and a lot of downs. And sometimes you can have career progression, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's financial progression. You kind of have to figure out the right balance for yourself as you slowly find the best rhythm. I do teach. I teach part-time at NYU. I try to pick up, I'm a freelancer in every sense of the word. So I try to pick up some gigs that kind of helps supplement my income. But all in all, I think the way I'm finding myself doing it is by relying on my community and making sure that I'm building a community that is made up of producers and filmmakers, in which we could have these honest conversations and kind of ask each other, how much are you asking for your fee, or how, it's a lot of it doesn't have to all happen in a vacuum. And I think the more we can have these conversations, the easier it starts getting in terms of finding, again, what works for you. And I think I'm also just being patient because it takes many years to get a project off the ground, and kind of being at peace with that, but also understanding how to take care of yourself at a personal level as you're trying to figure out how to make a project come together is really key in building that that kind of a tenacity, I guess, if you will. But I hope that's answering the question. But I think in terms of sustainability itself, I don't have a total answer because I think I'm still deeply in it. And I think that's that's part of the job, I think, of producing independently. And I would just advise everyone to continue talking to their community and asking each other those important questions in order to figure out what works best for you.
Well, yeah, and I ask because everyone's answer is different. I mean, I think people look to me as, you know, someone to work up towards, and I work other jobs. Like my producing does not sustain me every year. And so I think your point about transparency, I find really important. I really push that aspect because that's, if we're transparent with how things are going, what we're making, we can all advocate for each other, which I think is a lot stronger position. Anya, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I produce with we have a smallish mid independent production company called
You don't have
Multitude
to
Films.
downplay it.
Well, I mean, it's not actually a big production company, but I think it's not a big production company, but I think I don't, it's been really significant for me to have producing partners and to have a team in working on projects. And, you know, I mean, there's a lot to say. It's like building a production company doesn't make sense for every producer. It's like you're also spending your time on producing another entity simultaneously than to be working on like the creative projects. But I think in terms of the value for, you know, and the sort of decisions that you make as a company and as a team is a little bit different than decisions that you might make as an individual. But, you know, I think probably every producer is working on many projects simultaneously. And I think both in terms of the, you know, sort of figuring out how we build our slate and sequence the projects. And, you know, it was a really significant turn for us to be able to work on some projects that were financed at the outset. That was like a huge turning point for our company, in addition to the independent films that are like much slower to independently fundraise for and finance. And that I think has been, even with strong relationships that we've built over years, it's still really hard to fundraise, you know, combination of grants and equity for projects. So, you know, I don't know. I think both materially and capacity wise and soul wise, and when things are hard because of dynamics in any, you know, either interpersonally or structurally, you know, my source of strength has definitely, and perspective has definitely come from being able to like go back to my team, and 100%, you know, also sort of the broader community is a really big part of that. But there are some things that, you know, very immediately because of working inside a project, and it's really significant to have people who see and know that too, and, you know, that you can kind of help give each other perspective or reminders of reality or just some hopefulness, or, you know, those pep talks when we sometimes need them, or just like celebration and celebrating, you know, like the many different moments along the way that are also like, we get to do this, we get to create with each other. Like, what an amazing thing. So yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I think for me, it's both the material, of course, is so important. And I think just what you said, Rebecca, in terms of how we're all also continuing to push forward the conversations with our funders and financiers and in the industry around everything as it goes, as far as what it means in terms of our fees, of course, and what it means in terms of like what are reasonable expectations in terms of like taking care of our crew and our teams and around the trajectories of our film. You know, those are all things that kind of, by nature of the way that we have, you know, the way that this sort of industry is set up, they can be very isolating and siloed, and it's really important to be continuing to keep in mind like our entire field and our community as we're having those conversations.
Diane, you also work with a partner. Do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I mean, Mel and I, Mel Miller, my producing partner at Fishbowl Films, and I have had our company for many years now. And most of it was just an LLC we would run our expenses out of while we were trying to get projects off the ground, you know, and it's only in the last couple of years that we've finally been able to kind of either get a little bit of momentum or be able to like, you know, have multiple projects going and happening. And part of that is in conjunction with, you know, with the teams that you build or the relationships that you build and the people that you work with. And, you know, my motto is always, it's the people in the project, right? And it's just so important to keep focused on why you're doing what you're doing and what you really want to get out of it. And, you know, and then choosing the partners and the projects, you know, that mean something to you and that you can, that can sustain you, and whether that's financially or creatively or spiritually or whatever it is, right? Like you have to really keep asking yourself those questions, because what we do is more than a job, right? And it's not a 9-to-5 thing. And it takes a lot of effort and time. And so I think the more as a producer, you're grounded into what all of this means, because you can get easily swept up in a storm pretty quickly. It's just important to just continually be grounded and to continually move forward. You know, I don't have an answer for sustainability other than I get up every day and I just keep working. And part of it is being open to things that, you know, especially earlier in your career, either jobs or things or partnerships that maybe don't feel like exactly what you want to do, but can you learn something out of this? Can you get something out of this? Like, what is this a stepping stone to something further down the road, right? Because none of us have a magic ball that we can see the future in. And the only way you can build these careers is by just to continually keep going and to continually keep questioning and asking yourself and building your own communities and your own partnerships. And that becomes sustainable.
Yeah. When I put out the sustainability report in 2021, which was mostly focused on financial. And I would say this year, the sustainability conversations I'm trying to start are really more emotional sustainability and your bandwidth and having a life and having a family, having space, all the things that you want in addition to your career. You know, it has been just as hard for producers. So really starting to have those conversations. That's an important piece of talking about sustainability. Laura, you're based in Oakland. You've been championing new voices, new filmmakers for such a long time. What has your journey been?
Well, yeah, I think when earlier in my career, I worked for a production company in theater in New York, and I actually still divide my time between Oakland and Brooklyn, but I wanted to transition into doing film full time because I'd done a few films and caught the bug. And when I first started out, I produced a few lower budget films that were not not having a lot of commercial potential. And I really went into debt for a while and kind of didn't have a plan. And I was just going from one project to the other. And I still don't really have a solid plan, but I've learned to diversify. And even like that bi-coastal lifestyle helps me diversify. I have a community in New York and I have a community here in the Bay Area that I love. And I'm working on narrative features and documentaries and commercials and art films that live in museums. And I love that kind of combination of different types of projects. And some of them pay more than others, but I'm really into that variety. And I think I'm echoing what a couple other people have said, like that diversification leads me to make relationships with all different kinds of people. So I've grown my network exponentially in the past few years. And yeah, here in the Bay, some other filmmakers and I have started what we're calling the Oakland Film Center for now, but that could change. But it's really meant to be a creative hub for all Bay Area filmmakers, but also people who are visiting either for a few days or they're making a movie here and want a place to go and mingle with other filmmakers. And what's important about that in terms of sustainability is that we see a lot of filmmakers from the Bay end up feeling like they have to move to LA in order to have a scene and a network and have those chance encounters with other people. And there's so much creativity and talent here that we want to just create this space for people to be able to meet each other and feel like they have a scene. And where our really long-term goal is to have a permanent physical space. But right now, like this year, we have a number of events coming up we have partner venues. And so there's just like this real need for community, and we're doing that. We're doing some community building, and that's really energizing to me too.
I appreciate that. At the end of last year, I was thinking about what should Dear Producer be for 2023. It's just me. I can do whatever program, any initiative. And I was talking to the wonderful Elise McKimmey at Sundance, who runs the Writing and Directing Lab. And I asked her, like, what do you think? And she's like, the answer is always the same, which is filmmakers just want to get together. They just want space to be together in community. And so I think however you can do that in your own spaces will benefit you and benefit, those around you. Lauren is in North Carolina, and she is a full-time professor at the college I went to. How are you making it work, Lauren?
Well, I believe as I get older, especially, I believe in healthcare. I believe in retirement. And I believe in knowing my worth and my value and making sure that the budgets, when I do decide to do something, are going to cover certain things. And I believe in turning things down. Unfortunately, sometimes if it's something that I appreciate, because it's not going to be sustaining. And I believe in partnerships. I had great partners. Couldn't have done it without Max and Angus. And I've seen producers sort of think that they can do it all themselves, and you never should. And so all of those things. So I have to look for those pathways. And one of them is teaching. I run an entire program, the grad program at University of North Carolina School of the Arts. I believe in the next generation. So these are valuable places to spend my time. And then I target the time of the year where it's best for me to devote that time, while I know that I'm covered with salary and benefits and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very strategic about all of these pathways. And I think that that's the best advice I can give young filmmakers, that find those areas. And it also means that you might be doing something crew, not as a producer, but as a support for producers who can pay you for that time and building your network, and then taking a project and that's yours and making it your time. So these are all the different ways that I have been able to make it sustainable, but I have had to learn over time.
I love that you said I believe in retirement.
Yeah, right.
But I'm 44.
Too.
Yeah,
I'm 44
and I'm thinking about it. Yeah, like how am I going to retire? Like, I mean, these are the things that are on my mind now. It's like I don't want to produce until I'm 70. I just don't. And so I'm also thinking about longevity as well, and how long can you be in the grind and the hustle is something that's on my mind.
I do want to say one more thing, because I think it's critical, and that is that we are each other's support.
Yeah.
And very often, very talented producers will call me and say, I've got nothing for this time period. And I make it a really important part of my process is to make sure that they're covered for a certain time period while they are in early development. So we are constantly cycling people through to help with guest artists. And I started a nonprofit to be able to support other people. So my problem is your problem, and your problem is my problem. And I think we have to really remember that we're in it together.
I love that. You have a lot of students that are your big fans in the chat right now, and I appreciate it. Maria, how about your journey and how you're making it work right now? We were just talking before we joined about how you have a background in research as well, and maybe something about you people don't know.
Yeah, so I came into film first through marketing. I grew up loving movies, and I was working in the public sector and nonprofit, and my background coming out of college was in research, which led me to market research at a studio. But that experience was what kind of made me really interested in making the films more so than selling them, because being in those test screenings, being surrounded by the filmmakers. And so it's been really interesting to kind of have this past life that was much more structured for a company with benefits, with all those things, and then taking a leap when I decided to go to film school and decide to make the films myself. And I think, you know, every journey is very different, and mine sometimes in the moment doesn't quite make sense, but in hindsight, I realized just how much I learned from having that past life at a studio. And it makes me think about producing in a bit of a different way, in particular, realizing how important it is to have a very intentional voice in the room, who wants to prioritize just kind of diversifying the types of stories we get. And so that kind of becomes my guiding light. And whenever it becomes difficult to, for all the reasons we're all speaking about, the sustainability of it all, I think about how it's so easy to push people out of this industry when they don't have a particular, or actually people feel like they need to push themselves out because they don't have a particular background or financial situation. And I think it takes a lot of us to, again, build that community in order to keep us moving forward. Because otherwise you would just still have the same types of voices over and over again. But yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier that I teach, and that also helps me be a better producer. You know, I teach producing to grad students, and I learn from them as well. And so I think we have to maintain an open mind as far as how all of these different jobs we do can improve ourselves as producers. And you know, some of those filmmakers that I'm teaching might be filmmakers that I work with someday. And so it's all just, again, I can't stress enough how important that community building is for me.
Deidre, we will wrap up with you as you're also wrapping up to just get on a flight. She's checking out of her Airbnb in like a minute. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about how you're making it work and your journey?
For sure. I mean, sustainability, going through the Sundance Producers Lab in 2021, sustainability was a big theme of that. And I was lucky enough to get to talk to you at the Producer Summit that year. And you and I spoke about equity. So when Erica Tremblay, the writer, director, and producer of Fancy Dance, when we sat down to work out our own agreement together, I laid that on the table. Equity, you know, producers are in it for the long haul, and we should be compensated for our time in the same way that everyone else is. And Erica was totally amenable to that from the get-go. And it really helped us too when we were bringing on other partners. We just like kept to the idea of equity. And Tommy and Nina, who I've mentioned before, and Heather Ray, they were all in agreement about it. And so that's how we moved forward throughout the entire film. It worked out really well. When now that I'm done with this film and it's premiered, like, just full disclosure, I'm pretty broke. So I'm headed back to, my family and I just moved to Lawrence, Kansas. I grew up in Kansas, and during the pandemic, we decided to be closer to my mother, who's getting older. And I am going to go back to research, not from the marketing aspect, but from production. I work with production designers and line producers and a bunch of different departments, and it pays slightly better than an indie producer does. But even in that regard, it's a position that's trying to unionize and transparency. We have a group where we fully disclose what we make on every single project so that people know what to ask for. And it's helped immensely. And then long-term, in Kansas, there isn't much of a film community. And so I'm looking into starting up a nonprofit there to teach digital arts, to teach people from the community, especially kids, how to make their own short films and podcasts. It's a very, Lawrence, Kansas is a very rich cultural area, as many people probably don't know, but digital arts, it's very much lacking. So I'd like to start building my own film community there.
That's wonderful. And I think to kind of close out the conversation, I will say part of sustainability is also celebrating your success, which all of you have had a lot of success this last week, whether your film sells right away or doesn't, or at all, or for how much. I think the general consensus also on the ground was just making a movie and finishing a movie is such a feat. It always has been, even more so now. And so I just want to say congrats to all of you. I hope you get some rest, some downtime, some celebration, some alone time before you jump right back into the next thing. And just thank you guys all for being here and sharing. You know, I know, again, it's the end of the week of your festival, so we all really appreciate you showing up for the community. Thank you guys. I know they would all clap if they could.
Well, also, Rebecca, on the topic of sustainability, I just wanted to thank you. And I know a lot of us are so grateful for the work you're doing with the Producers Union. And that is one of the main tracks towards sustainability that we're all looking forward to.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. All right, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having me.